They were called Kaiser's Coffins, a fleet of junk carriers, so slow, cheap, and unarmored they were considered suicide. But when Hitler's U-boats were winning the war, these disposable ships were the only weapon that could close the 700-mile Atlantic gap. This is the story of how the ships everyone mocked won the most important battle of the war. November 5th, 1942, the North Atlantic, 600 miles southeast of Greenland. The air is so cold, it burns your lungs. You're on the bridge of the SS Hobbema, a Dutch merchant freighter, and your knuckles are white as you grip the railing. Your ship is loaded with 7,000 tons of munitions and wheat, destined for Liverpool. But right now, Liverpool feels like a different planet. You are in the pit. The sailors call it the Mid-Atlantic Gap. To the men of the Merchant Navy, it's a 700-mile-wide patch of icy hell. It's the one place where the sky is empty. The RAF heavy bombers from Britain can't reach this far west. The Canadian Liberators from Newfoundland can't reach this far east. The planes from Iceland can't cover the southern routes. Out here, there is no air cover. There is no air support. There is only the convoy, plodding along at 8 knots, and the 40-foot swells that try to roll you under. And there are they, the U-boots. For 2 days, your convoy, SC-107, has been stalked. You've seen the signal flares from the Canadian corvette HMCS Rosthan, your tiny, lone escort, racing around the edges of the convoy like a stressed-out sheepdog. But the flock is too big, 42 ships. And the wolves are here. A lookout, his voice cracking, shouts, "Torpedo track, starboard bow." You don't even have time to turn your head. The SS Hobbema vanishes in a flash of white-hot cordite. The 7,000 tons of munitions detonate in a single, catastrophic explosion, vaporizing the ship and the 40 men aboard. Seconds later, a second torpedo rips into the SS Dalcroix. A third hits the Renos. This is not a battle, it is a slaughter. This is the reality of the Battle of the Atlantic in 1942. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, head of the Kriegsmarine's U-boat arm, has perfected his Rudeltaktik, the Wolfpack. His submarines hunt in groups, guided by radio, surfacing at night to overwhelm the few, exhausted escorts, and butcher the slow-moving merchantmen. Britain is starving. Every month, over 600,000 tons of shipping are sent to the bottom of the Atlantic. Fuel, food, tanks, planes all of it, lost. Winston Churchill will later write, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. The Allies have an answer, but it's not here. The great fleet carriers, the USS Enterprise, the HMS Victorious, are fighting for their lives in the Pacific, or guarding the vital Arctic convoys to Russia. They are billion-dollar assets, the capital ships of a new age. You do not risk a fleet carrier in the submarine-infested gap. They are too valuable, too big, and too few. The naval brass in Washington and London know what they need. They need an airfield, a floating, mobile airfield that can go where the bombers can't. One that is cheap, replaceable, and can be built in large numbers. But the admirals of the Gun Club and the aviators of the Fleet Carrier Navy are appalled by the suggestion. The British have already tried, converting a captured German merchant ship into the HMS Audacity. It was a crude, flat-topped vessel that proved the concept worked right before a U-boat torpedoed and sank it in December 1941. The professionals sneer at the idea. A real carrier needs 30-knot speed to launch aircraft. It needs armor. It needs a full air wing. These conversions are a joke. They're slow, cramped, and built on civilian hulls. They can't maneuver, they can't fight, and they can't survive. They are, in the words of one prominent shipbuilder, junk. In Norfolk, Virginia, at the largest naval base in the world, the men working in the shipyards have a darker name for the few experimental models being built. They see the thin hulls, the flat tops, and the complete lack of armor. They know these ships are destined for the most dangerous water in the world. They call them Kaiser's Coffins. They have no idea that these pathetic, mocked, and dismissed little ships, the Escort Carriers, are about to become the single most important weapon in the war. They are the ships that will close the gap, break the Wolfpack, and win the Battle of the Atlantic. The men in the Norfolk shipyards aren't the only ones who are skeptical. In Washington, D.C., the debate is furious. The admirals of the gun club men raised on the battleship dogma of armor, speed, and massive firepower see these proposed escort carriers as a dilution of naval power. They are a fleet of targets, a waste of steel that could be used for real warships, like destroyers and cruisers. But the Battle of the Atlantic is not a real war by their standards. It's a war of mathematics, a war of tonnage, lost versus built. And by the winter of 1942, the math is failing. One man, sitting in the Oval Office, sees this with terrifying clarity. President Franklin D. Roosevelt is a Navy man to his core. He understands maritime logistics better than any of his generals. He doesn't just read the reports of sunken ships, he visualizes the oil, the grain, and the men sinking into the cold darkness. He knows the U-boat crisis is not a naval problem, it is an existential one. If the convoys bleed dry, Britain starves, the Soviet Union collapses, and the planned invasion of Europe, D-Day, is impossible. Roosevelt is done waiting for the Navy brass to approve a perfect solution. He needs ships now, and he knows exactly who to call. His call doesn't go to a pedigreed naval architect in Bath, Maine. It goes to a man who has never built a complex warship in his life. A man the old guard shipbuilders despise. His name is Henry J. Kaiser. Kaiser is not a shipbuilder. He's a force of nature. He's a West Coast construction magnate who built the Hoover Dam and the Grand Coulee. His specialty isn't quality, it's speed. His Liberty ship program is already legendary, building massive cargo ships from prefabricated modules and spitting them out in weeks, sometimes even days. Roosevelt gives Kaiser an impossible task. Take a standard C-3 merchant ship hula freighter, designed to carry tractors, and cotton and turn it into an aircraft carrier. Do it faster than anyone in history has ever built a capital ship, and then build 50 of them. The admirals are horrified. A C-3 hull is a hog, it's slow, unarmored, and wallows in heavy seas. A warship, they argue, must be built from the keel up. It must be compartmentalized to survive torpedoes. It must have speed to evade. Kaiser just nods and gets to work. At his shipyards in Richmond, California, and Vancouver, Washington, an industrial miracle begins. They don't convert the C-3 hulls. They use the design as a template and lay down new keels. The process is brutal and efficient. The merchant ship superstructure is simply omitted. In its place, shipyard workers, welders, riveters, many of them women who have never held a torch before, begin welding a 500-foot flat top of high-tensile steel. The result is the Bogue-class escort carrier, and it is a true monstrosity. It's 495 feet long, but the flight deck is narrow. It has a tiny, cramped island superstructure on the starboard side. Below decks, it's a labyrinth. It has no armor. It has one single screw, powered by a simple steam turbine. Top speed, on a good day, with a following wind, is 18 knots. A surfaced Type 7 U-boat can do 17.6 knots. This ship cannot run, it cannot hide, it cannot fight. Its only purpose is to serve as a 500-foot patch of sovereign, floating territory in the middle of the ocean, a place for an airplane to take off and land. The first pilots assigned to these baby flat tops are overcome with a mix of gallows humor and genuine terror. The flight deck is so short that a wires one landing snagging the very first arrestor wire ice, the only way to avoid crashing into the safety barrier. The deck pitches and yaws violently in the Atlantic swells. An Essex-class fleet carrier is a floating city. This, they say, is a postage stamp. And they are tasked with flying the F-4F Wildcat and the TBF Avenger torpedo bomber. These are heavy, powerful, frontline naval aircraft. Launching one from a Bogue-class carrier is described by a pilot, Lieutenant Bus Miller, as a controlled accident. The planes are fitted with rockets for extra jet-assisted takeoff, thrust, just to hurl them into the air before they can fall off the bow. As these ships, the USS Bogue, USS Card, USS Core, begin their shakedown cruises in early 1943, the cynicism is rampant. The Navy brass still sees them as a diversion. The pilots see them as death traps. The crews, painting over the shipyard graffiti, know exactly what they are: slow, vulnerable, and packed to the brim with aviation fuel and high-explosive torpedoes. Kaiser's Coffins. But in March 1943, as these junk carriers are finally declared ready, the war in the Atlantic reaches its blackest, most desperate moment. The wolfpacks have gathered for one final, massive offensive. In a single 20-day period, they sink 108 merchant ships. Convoy SC 122 loses 13 ships. Convoy HX 229 loses 22. The system is breaking. Britain is just 6 weeks from running out of fuel. The Coffins are not just an experiment anymore. They are the only hope the Allies have left. They are about to sail directly into the gap and into the teeth of the U-boat fleet. April 28th, 1943, North Atlantic. The bridge of the USS Bogue. Captain Giles E. Short stands on the open bridge, his binoculars trained on the horizon. The Bogue is a living thing beneath his feet, but it's an awkward one. It shudders, it rolls, and the constant, high-pitched screech of the arrestor wires being tested on the flight deck is unnerving. They are in the pit, but they are not with a convoy. This is the new, desperate, and untested idea. The Bogue is the center of Hunter-Killer Group, Task Group 21.12. She is the hunter. Surrounding her, in a broad protective screen, are 4 old WWII-era 4-piper destroyers, the Killers. Their mission is not to escort. It is to loiter. They are sailing directly into the known patrol areas of Dönitz's wolfpacks. They are, quite literally, trolling for submarines. It's an act of profound aggression, or, as many of the destroyer captains quietly believe, an act of suicide. They are dangling a slow, 18-knot coffin, packed with 800,000 gallons of aviation gasoline in the most dangerous water on Earth. For days, nothing. Just the endless, grey, rolling ocean. The tension is unbearable. Then, on May 1st, the radio room explodes into frantic activity. The Bogue's most secret weapon isn't its planes. It's the mast rising from its deck. It's the antenna for a high-frequency direction finder, Huff-Duff. A radio man rips a sheet from his notepad. Bearing, sir. 090. U-boat transmission. Very strong. A German captain, miles away, has just surfaced his U-boat to send his nightly situation report to Dönitz. He feels completely safe. He is in the gap. The sky is his. On the Bogue's flight deck, a klaxon blares. Pilots, man your planes. A Grumman TBF Avenger, its belly loaded with 4 500-pound depth bombs, thunders down the impossibly short deck. The ship is pitching, and for a terrifying second, the heavily laden bomber sinks towards the waves. The crew on the bridge holds their breath. Then, its wings bite the air, and it claws for altitude. Lieutenant G. William Bill Chamberlain, the Avenger's pilot, levels off at 2,000 feet. He's flying into the rising sun, guided only by the radio vector. His 2 crewmen scan the grey emptiness. 20 minutes later, the radio man's voice crackles in his ear. Tally-ho! Tally-ho! Target sighted! Surface! 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 9 miles ahead, Chamberlain sees it. A long, black cigar shape, sitting lazily in the swell. It's U-569. The German crew is on the deck, stretching in the morning air. They are charging their batteries. They don't even see him. Chamberlain pushes the nose of the Avenger down. On the conning tower of U-569, a lookout finally spots the dark shape plunging from the sun. He screams. The flak-veering quad 20mm cannon swings around, spitting tracers, but it's too late. The U-boat's commander, frantic, shouts the order, "Alarm! Tauchen! Tauchen! Alarm! Dive! Dive!" The U-boat's bow angles down, churning white water as it tries to escape into the depths. Chamberlain's voice is ice calm over the intercom. Bombs away. The 4 depth bombs are set for a shallow, 25-foot detonation. They straddle the U-boat perfectly. The Atlantic erupts. The force of the explosions, funneled by the water, lifts the 800-ton submarine bodily upwards. It breaches the surface like a dying whale, its back broken. Men are blown from the conning tower. A massive black bubble of oil and air bursts from its ruptured hull. U-569 is gone. Back on the bogue, the radio report is electric. The entire crew, from the captain to the engine room, snipes, feels the jolt. The coffin has just punched a wolf in the mouth. This is the beginning. The month is May 1943. It will not be known as a good month for the Allies. It will be known, in the history of the Kriegsmarine, as Schwarzer Mai Black May. The hunter-killer groups, led by Bogue, Card, and Corps, are a revelation. They are not just defending, they are exterminating. The junk carriers prowl the convoy routes. They're Avengers and Wildcats, armed with new radar, new depth charges, and a new, terrible weapon called the FIDO, acoustic homing torpedo, are relentless. When a U-boat surfaces at night to charge, its own radar emissions are picked up by the planes, who swoop in from the darkness. When it dives, the destroyers use sonar to find it, and the Avengers drop FIDO torpedoes, which listen for the U-boat's propeller and hunt it down. There is no escape. The sky is no longer safe. The night is no longer safe. The depths are no longer safe. In this single month, Dönitz loses 41 U-boats. It is a catastrophic, unsustainable loss. The attrition rate for his crews, his veteran aces, is over 25%. On May 24, 1943, Grand Admiral Dönitz, in a state of shock, sends a signal to his entire fleet. The Rudeltaktik is over. He orders all U-boats to withdraw from the North Atlantic. The Battle of the Atlantic, a war that had raged for 1,348 days, has been won not by battleships, but by junk. But for the men on the escort carriers, the victory is short-lived. They have proven their worth, and for their success, they will be given an even more impossible, and far more famous, task. They are about to go from hunting submarines to supporting the largest invasion in human history, and then to face the full, terrifying might of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The Atlantic victory changes everything. The Kaiser's coffins, now respectfully nicknamed Jeep Carriers, or baby flat-tops, by the men who serve on them have proven their worth. They are the heroes of the Gap. But the war is far from over, and in the calculus of global conflict, success does not earn you a rest, it earns you a more dangerous assignment. The year is 1944. The strategic center of the war has shifted from the cold, grey Atlantic to the vast, humid, island-dotted expanse of the Pacific. This is a carrier war, but it is a war defined by the giants, the Essex-class fleet carriers. 30,000 tons of steel, 33 knot speed, carrying nearly 100 aircraft. They are the queens of the sea, the tip of the American spear, and they have a problem. The American strategy, island hopping, requires massive, brutal, amphibious landings. Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, tens of thousands of Marines and Army infantry hitting volcanic ash beaches, crawling into a dense network of Japanese pillboxes, bunkers, and caves. These men need air support. Not just a bombing raid an hour before they land, but constant, on-station, point-blank air support. They need planes that can loiter overhead, ready at a moment's notice to drop a 500-pound bomb on a machine gun nest that has the beach pinned down. But you cannot ask an Essex-class fleet carriera, $2 billion in modern money Assetto sit stationary off a beach. Its job is to roam, to strike, to find the Japanese fleet and sink it. Tying it to an invasion makes it a massive, floating target for Japanese kamikaze and submarine attacks. The Navy needs a different kind of carrier. It needs a ship that is expendable. Henry J. Kaiser is, once again, the man for the job. He has perfected his art. He doesn't just convert ships anymore. He builds carriers from the keel up on an assembly line. His new design, the Casablanca-class escort carrier, is the ultimate expression of his philosophy. It is, if anything, worse than the Bogue class. It's lighter, it's thinner, and it has almost no armor plating. The hulls are welded, not riveted, because it's faster. The compartments are notoriously leaky. They have minimal anti-aircraft guns, and they are still powered by civilian-grade steam engines that can, at best, churn out 19 knots. A pilot, landing on one, famously remarked, "I've taken dumps that were bigger than this ship, but they are cheap, and they are fast to build." Kaiser's yards begin rolling them out, at one point launching a new, finished carrier every 3.5 days. In just over a year, he builds 50 of them. These ships, the USS Gambia Bay, USS Streetlow, USS White Plains, USS Kitkun Bayare, manned by reservists, hastily trained pilots, and crews who know exactly what they are. Floating ammunition dumps, they are not the A-team, they are the support. In October 1944, this disposable fleet is given its most critical task. General Douglas MacArthur is making good on his promise. "I shall return. The invasion of the Philippines, the battle for Leyte Gulf, is on. It will be the largest naval battle in human history. Admiral William Bull Halsey's Third Fleet, the main battle force, will provide distant cover. But the job of protecting the invasion transports and providing close air support for the 200,000 men landing on the beach falls to the CVEs. They are organized into 3 groups. The southernmost is Taffy 1, the central group is Taffy 2, and the northernmost, most exposed group is Task Unit 77.4.3, code name Taffy 3. Taffy 3 is commanded by Rear Admiral Clifton Ziggy Sprague. It consists of 6 Casablanca-class escort carriers. Their only protection is a thin screen of 3 destroyers and 4 tiny destroyer escorts. They are expecting a quiet mission, anti-submarine patrols and bombing Japanese positions on Leyte. What they do not know is that the Imperial Japanese Navy has just launched its final, desperate gamble, Shogo, a plan to lure Halsey's main fleet away with a decoy, and then send the most powerful battleship force on Earth to annihilate the soft invasion fleet. On the night of October 24th, Halsey takes the bait. He races north, taking every battleship, every fleet carrier, and every cruiser with him. Taffy 3 is left completely alone. October 25th, 1944, 6:37 a.m. Off the island of Samar, Ensign William C. Brooks, flying a TBF Avenger from the USS Streetlow, is on a routine dawn patrol. The sea is calm, the sky clear. He looks east, and his blood turns to ice. He grabs his radio transmitter, his voice breaking with disbelief. Enemy sighted. 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, 11 destroyers. Bearing, 030. Distance, 20 miles. And there, heading right for us. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Sprague grabs the voice tube. He thinks the pilot is delirious. He thinks he's misidentified Halsey's fleet. "Confirm," he snaps. The reply comes back, high-pitched, desperate. "I can see the pagoda masts. I can see the biggest meatball flags I've ever seen. I tell you, it's the entire Japanese fleet. It is Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force, and at its head is the Yamatothi largest, most powerful battleship ever built." The junk carriers of Taffy 3 are sailing directly into the guns of the Imperial Navy. 6:45 a.m. The bridge of the USS Fanshawe Bay. Rear Admiral Clifton Ziggy. Sprague doesn't have time to be terrified. He is a man facing a firing squad of giants. The first salvo from the battleship Yamato is already in the air. It's a ranging shot, from 20 miles away far beyond the range of any gun Sprague possesses. His fleet has a combined top speed of 19 knots. The Japanese cruisers bearing down on him are doing 30. He cannot run, he cannot fight. Aboard the Japanese flagship, Admiral Kurita is equally confused. His lookouts report carriers, but they are impossibly slow. These cannot be Halsey's fleet, they must be transports. He gives the order, general attack. The Japanese formation, a disciplined line, breaks into a frantic charge. They smell blood. Sprague, on the Fanshawe Bay, makes the only decision he can. He turns his 6 tinfoil carriers towards the enemy, into a light, easterly wind. Launch all aircraft. This is not a prepared strike. This is a panic launch. Pilots are sprinting to their planes, some still buttoning their flight suits. The Avengers on deck are loaded with depth charges for hunting submarines. The Wildcats are loaded with fragmentation bombs for strafing ground troops on later. It doesn't matter. Launch everything. As the planes claw into the air, the first shells arrive. The ocean around Taffy 3 erupts in a forest of coloured water plumes. The Japanese use different coloured dyes in their shells to tell which salvo belongs to which ship. The sea is stained red, green, and yellow. A shell from the battleship Congo smashes through the Fanshawe Bay's flight deck, killing and wounding several men, but miraculously, it's a dud. Sprague's voice is iron cold over the radio. He knows his carriers will be vaporized in minutes. His only hope is his tiny screen. 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts. These are the tin cans. He gives an order that will become one of the most famous in naval history. Small boys, attack. On the bridge of the destroyer USS Johnston, Lieutenant Commander Ernest E. Evans, a full-blooded Cherokee from Oklahoma, doesn't need to be told twice. He has already ordered his ship to turn toward the Japanese line. He grabs the ship's intercom. "This is a fighting ship, and I will take her in harm's way. We are going in." The Johnston, 2,100 tons, charges headlong at a 25,000-ton Japanese heavy cruiser, its 5-inch guns blazing like cap pistols. At 10 miles, the Johnston fires a full spread of 10 torpedoes. 2 minutes later, they see it. A bright flash on the bow of the cruiser Kumano. The Kumano is staggered, its bow blown off, and it's forced to pull out of the fight. Evans has drawn first blood, but the Yamato and her escorts turn their full attention to this one, suicidal destroyer. 3 14-inch battleship shells and 3 6-inch cruiser shells hit the Johnston in a single, devastating volley. The bridge is annihilated. The radar is gone. The main steering is gone. Commander Evans, his shirt torn from his body, his face wounded, stumbles to the rear battle steering station. He orders the crew to steer by hand. The Johnston is a wreck, but it is still fighting. Now the other small boys follow. The USS Hole and USS Heermann charge in. They are joined by the USS Samuel B. Roberts, a tiny 1,200-ton destroyer escort. Its crew calls it the Sammy B. It has 2 5-inch guns and 3 torpedoes. The pilot of a Sammy B. Torpedo shouts, "I give us 5 minutes," as he launches his fish at the heavy cruiser Chokai. It hits. The Chokai is crippled. Overhead, the cats and dogs, air wing of Taffy 3, is fighting with the same desperation. Pilots with no bombs are making dry runs at the Japanese bridges. Their 50 caliber machine guns spitting, trying to distract the gunners. Pilots with depth charges useless against surface, ships drop them anyway, hoping the explosion will rattle the Japanese crews. One pilot, Lieutenant Ye, Paul B. Garrison, radios in the clear, his voice heard across the fleet. "I've got a Jap cruiser in my sights. I'm attacking with my 50 calibers." And my harsh language. But the Japanese fleet is too big. The disposable USS Gambia Bay, at the rear of the carrier formation, is bracketed by shells. She is hit, her single engine room floods, and she slows to a crawl. The Japanese cruisers close in, methodically pounding her to junk. At 9/7, the Gambia Bay rolls over and sinks the only American aircraft carrier in the entire war to be sunk by surface gunfire. The USS Streetlow is hit. The USS Kalinin Bay is hit. The tin cans are dying. The Hole and Samuel B. Roberts are sinking. The Johnston is a burning, dead-in-the-water hulk. Commander Evans still on board, waving to his crew as they abandon ship. Taffy 3 is being annihilated. There is no one coming to help. And then, Admiral Kurita stops. He has been under attack for 2 solid hours. The air is black with smoke. The sea is churned by torpedoes. His cruisers are damaged. He is convinced this mosquito fleet, fighting with a ferocity he has never seen, must be the escort for Halsey's main battle group. He believes he has fallen into a trap. At 9:11 a.m., just as his ships are about to break through to the defenseless invasion transports, Admiral Takeo Kurita gives the order. All ships, reverse course. We will reform and head north. He turns his fleet around. He retreats. Taffy 3 has won an impossible victory. The junk carriers, the Coffins, and their suicidal tin can escorts have defeated the most powerful surface fleet Japan has left. But for one of the carriers, the ordeal is not over. The Battle of Samar is finished, but a new, terrifying weapon is about to make its debut. 10:40 a.m. The bridge of the USS Street Low. The men of Taffy 3 are in a state of collective shock. The Japanese fleet is gone. The sea is littered with the wreckage of their friends the Gambia Bay, the Johnston, the Hull, the Sammy B. They are surrounded by oil slicks and men in the water. They are exhausted, deafened, and traumatized. But they are alive. On the flight deck of the Street. Low call sign midway, until just a few weeks prior, damage control parties are already at work. Her flight deck is scarred from the battle, but she is still operational. Her pilots have rearmed and are preparing to launch again, this time to hunt for the sinking American ships and drop life rafts. Admiral Sprague is trying to consolidate his surviving carriers, this herd of turtles, into a defensive formation. The sky, for the first time in 3 hours, is quiet. Then, a lookout on the Street Low's port side squints. Aircraft unidentified, bearing 090 high. The klaxons blare again. General quarters, man your battle stations. It's a single Japanese, A6M0, but it's not behaving like the others. It's not maneuvering. It's not lining up for a strafing run or a torpedo drop. It's in a steep, deliberate, powered dive. The gunners on the Street Low and the nearby USS Kalinin Bay fill the air with a wall of flak. Tracers stitch lines across the sky. The Zero is hit. Smoke trails from its engine. Its wing is shredded, but it does not stop. The men on the flight deck, seeing its trajectory, begin to run. They know, in that instant, this is something new. Something horrifying. This is Lieutenant Yukio Seki. He is the leader of the Shikishima Squadron, the 1st Kamikaze Special Attack Unit. He has been ordered to die, and he has chosen his target. At 10:51 a.m., the Zero, its engine screaming, smashes into the Street Low's flight deck. The impact is not spectacular. It's a glancing blow. The plane skids across the wooden deck and topples over the port side, shearing off its own landing gear. The crew of the Street Low, for one split second, breathes a sigh of relief. The pilot missed. The plane is in the water, but the 550-pound, 250 kg, bomb it was carrying did not miss. It was ripped from the plane's fuselage and punched straight through the unarmored steel of the flight deck. It falls directly into the hangar bay. The hangar bay of a Casablanca-class carrier is an industrial nightmare. It is packed, wing to wing, with TBF Avengers and Wildcat fighters, all fully fueled for the next patrol. It is a steel room containing 80,000 gallons of high-octane aviation gasoline, thousands of rounds of .50 caliber ammunition, and stacks of high-explosive bombs and torpedoes. The bomb detonates. The Street Low is ripped apart from the inside. A blinding white flash is followed by a catastrophic chain reaction. The first explosion ignites the aviation fuel, sending a plume of fire 1,000 feet into the air. This, in turn, cooks off the torpedo warheads. A second, titanic explosion of the torpedoes rips the entire flight deck elevator out of the ship and hurls it, spinning, into the sky. A third blast, then a fourth. The coffin has become a volcano. Men are simply vaporized at their gun mounts. The ship, its hull plates buckling, its interior an inferno, begins to settle by the stern. The abandoned ship order is given, but it's barely necessary. The Street Low is dying. At 11:25 a.m., just 34 minutes after the Kamikaze hit, the USS Street Low rolls over and slips beneath the waves, taking 143 of her crew with her. She is the first major American warship to be sunk by a kamikaze attack. The men of Taffy 3, watching from the decks of the White Plains and Kalinin Bay, are stunned into silence. They had just faced the world's most powerful battleships and survived. They had stared down 18-inch guns, and they had been defeated, their sister ship annihilated by a single, determined pilot in a single, obsolete plane. The battle off Samar was over. But for the disposable escort carriers, the real war of attrition, the war against the divine wind, was just beginning. They had proven they were not junk. Now, they would be asked to prove just how much punishment they could take. The sinking of the USS Street Low is not an isolated tragedy. It is the opening bell of a new, horrifying campaign. The Japanese High Command, its navy shattered and its air force depleted, has found a new, brutally effective doctrine. The divine wind, the Kamikaze, is now the principal weapon of the Imperial fleet, and their primary targets are the aircraft carriers. But the fleet carriers, the big Essex-class ships, are fast, heavily armoured, and protected by a massive, multi-layered ring of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Attacking them is a long shot. The junk carriers, however, they are a different story. They are slow, they are unarmoured, and their new mission, as 1,945 dawns, puts them intentionally in harm's way. They are the bait. They are assigned to the radar picket stations. Imagine you are on the bridge of a Casablanca-class carrier in the Philippine Sea. It is January 4th, 1945. Your ship, the USS Omni Bay, is a sister to the Street Low, a sister to the Gambia Bay. You are part of the vast armada sailing for the invasion of Lingayen Gulf. Your job is to sail 50 miles outside the main fleet, a lonely, vulnerable target. Your radar is the fleet's eyes. Your fighters are its first line of defense, and your thin, steel hull is its tripwire. For 2 days, it's been hell. General quarters sound so often the crew barely has time to eat. The radar screen is a nightmare of bogies, unidentified contacts flickering in and out of the clouds. The combat air patrol, the handful of wildcats flying a desperate circle around you, are exhausted, chasing shadows. It's late afternoon, 12 hours. The last patrol of the day is being recovered. The flight deck is busy. A lookout screams, "Plane! Starboard quarter, low!" It's not a Zero in a high dive. It's a France's, a twin-engine, fast attack bomber. It's coming in at wave-top height, so low and fast that the ship's radar didn't even see it until it was on top of them. The ship's guns, the pom-poms, and 40mm Bofors open up, tearing chunks of metal from the Japanese plane. It catches fire, but it's already too late. The pilot is dead or dying, but his course is set. The Omni Bay's captain orders a hard right turn, a desperate attempt to throw off the plane's aim. The flaming Francis just misses the island. It shears off the radar mast, and then, with a sickening crunch, it crashes through the wooden flight deck on the forward starboard side. The plane itself is a wreck, but, just like on the Street Low, its cargo is the killer. It carries two 250 kg bombs. The first bomb rips through the flight deck and detonates in the hangar bay. It ignites the fully fueled TBF Avengers parked there. The hangar becomes an inferno in 3 seconds. The second bomb does something even more devastating. It punches through the hangar deck, rips through the crew's mess hall, and detonates in the engine room, severing the ship's main fire suppression water lines. On the bridge, the captain grabs the collision alarm. He screams for damage control, but the reports coming back are pure horror. "Fire on the hangar deck! Fire in the engine room! Sir, we have no water pressure. The forward magazines are overheating. Steering is gone." The Omni Bay is dead in the water, with no way to fight the fire that is now feeding on 80,000 gallons of aviation fuel. The hangar deck, the one weak spot in all Kaiser's coffins, has become a blast furnace. Torpedoes and 500-pound bombs begin to cook off. The ship is ripped apart from the inside. The heat is so intense it buckles the steel flight deck. The abandoned ship order is given. Men, their clothes on fire, jump from the scorching deck into the sea. In less than 25 minutes, the USS Omni Bay is a blazing, molten wreck. 95 of her crew are dead. She is so far gone that the destroyer USS Burns is ordered to put her out of her misery. This is the price. This is the new reality. From Samar to Lingayen and on to the final, bloody battle at Okinawa, the junk carriers are the front line. They are the anvil upon which the Kamikaze hammer breaks itself. The USS Kitkun Bay, the USS Fanshawe Bay, the USS Sangamon, the USS Suwannee, all of them are hit, some repeatedly. They are burned, shattered, and mauled. But they have learned from the Street Low and the Omni Bay. Their damage control teams become the best in the fleet. They are no longer junk. They are the unkillables. They are the ships that bleed, but do not sink. They are the floating airfields that simply refuse to die, holding the line until the very last day of the war, August 15th, 1945, the deck of the USS Kitkun Bay, off the coast of Japan. The ship's loudspeaker crackles, not with the frantic cry of General Quarters, but with the voice of the ship's captain. The Emperor of Japan has broadcast his surrender. The war is over. On the scarred, patched-up flight deck, men sit in stunned silence. They are mechanics, gunners, pilots, and black-shoe sailors who haven't seen home in 2 years. They are the survivors. The Kitkun Bay herself is a survivor, her hull still bearing the scorched, twisted metal from a kamikaze strike off Okinawa that had killed 5 and wounded dozens. She, like her sisters, had done the impossible. She had made it. When the history of the Second World War was written, the legends would belong to the giants, to the Enterprise, the Big E, to the Missouri, where the surrender was signed, to the Essex-class ships that had formed the backbone of the fast carrier task force. But the war was not won by legends alone. It was won by logistics. It was won by numbers. And it was won by junk. The escort carriers were the single greatest statistical triumph of the war. In total, the United States would build 122 of them. Combined with their British counterparts, the Allies wielded a fleet of 151 baby flat tops. In the Atlantic, the Kaiser's Coffins, the Bogue and Card and Core had been the decisive weapon. Hunter-killer groups built around them would be credited with sinking or assisting in the sinking of 53 German U-boats, breaking the back of the wolfpack and ensuring the tide of men and material for D-Day would get through. In the Pacific, they were the war's workhorses. They were the ship that was there. They flew the anti-submarine patrols. They provided the air cover. They spotted for the battleships. They ferried replacement planes and pilots to the front. They were cargo ships. They were fighters. They were troop transports. At the battle off Samar, the 6 disposable carriers of Taffy 3, with their handful of destroyers, had, through sheer suicidal courage, turned back the most powerful battleship in the world. And when the kamikaze threat was born, it was these unarmored 19-knot ships that were placed on the firing line. They were the sentinels, the picket ships, the expendable assets. 27 escort carriers were hit by the divine wind. Some, like the Street Low and Omni Bay, were consumed by fire. Others, like the Sangamon and Suwannee, were turned into floating charnel houses, yet their crews, in superhuman displays of damage control, put out the fires and saved the ships. They were never fast. They were never strong. They were never pretty. They were, to the very end, junk. And because they were junk, they were used for the jobs no one else could do. They were placed in the gap where no other air cover could reach. They were told to guard an invasion beach while the main fleet went hunting. They were shoved out on radar picket duty to die first. They were the ships that were never meant to fight a fleet, but did. They were the ships that were never meant to survive a kamikaze, but did. When the war ended, they were the first to be forgotten. There were no parades for the USS Bogue. The Essex-class carriers were refitted, their decks strengthened for the jet age. The Iowa-class battleships were mothballed, national treasures to be preserved. But the escort carriers? They had served their purpose. By 1947, the vast majority of Kaiser's Coffins were in the scrapyard. The Casablanca-class carriers that had held the line at Fanshawe Bay, the White Plains, the Kalinin Bay were sold as surplus. Their hulls, which had dodged 18-inch shells and survived the divine wind, were cut apart for razor blades, for car bodies, for the rebar that would build the suburbs of a new, peaceful America. They were the most important ships you've never heard of. They were the impossible carriers that won the war and then vanished, their sacrifice as quiet and unglamorous as their design. They were mocked by the Navy. dismissed by shipbuilders, and became the death traps their crews feared. But in the most crucial moments of the war, when the sky was empty and the enemy was at the gate, the junk held the line.